Hello crochet friends, I'm Graceface and welcome to another video. Has this ever happened to you? You're walking out of the grocery store, carrying all of your stuff to your car, when all of a sudden, the handle on your grocery bag breaks. All of your groceries fall to the ground and spill everywhere? Well, it happened to me recently. In my state, we have a plastic bag ban. This means that when you're at a store, you have to bring your own shopping bag or pay 8 cents to get a plastic bag from them. The idea behind it is to reduce the number of plastic shopping bags that make it out into our environment as waste and to encourage people to bring their own grocery bags. To be honest, it took me like 6 months to remember. First, I forgot to put them in the car to bring with me. Then I'd forget to get them out of the car and bring them into the store. But now I am a good kid and I always remember to grab my bags out of the backseat of my car when I head into any store. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed this, but the reusable grocery bags that are out there really suck. The main problem that I tend to have with reusable shopping bags is that they break really quickly and they all tend to break on me in a very similar manner. The weakest point on these bags in my experience have been the handle and the seam along the top where the hem is sewed. This bag is the culprit that broke on me at the grocery store the other day. If we look inside of the shopping bag, you can see they've tried to reinforce the handle, sewing a little X across where it was, but the point where it breaks isn't the part where it's actually sewed to the shopping bag itself. It's the stitching point where the holes went through the material itself to attach it. It's this material, it rips. I mean, am I really saving the environment from plastic waste if I'm throwing this entire thicker plastic bag into the trash every time they break? I have definitely stopped buying this style of bag due to their fragility, and I'm slowly making more crocheted bags to add to my collection. But it just feels wasteful and counterproductive for me to toss this entire bag. And it got me thinking of ways that I could repair it. Knowing that these handles are a problem, how can we repair this bag in a way that it's not going to just end me up in the same place later down the road? If I try to just sew the handles back on, I'm going to run into the same problem. I thought about it and then it hit me. What if the handles aren't attached at the top of the bag, but instead encircle the entire bag? I felt like this was a breakthrough, and after a few minutes of thinking about the problem, I came up with a design that I think is gonna work. I drew this very high-tech drawing for you guys to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Here we have the bag itself, and then you can see the handle is one long piece that kind of goes underneath. I did a blown out view here to make it a little bit easier for you to see it. So that way you can see that the handle goes underneath the bag and then continues up on this side. So this is all just one big long piece. Hopefully this will work. I don't know, we will find out. While I'm at it, I figured I could cover up this logo on the bag as well. Since I'll be sewing, I might as well make it cuter and more personalized for me. I'm gonna be looking at this bag hopefully for quite a while now. My plan for covering the logo is to make a mosaic overlay crochet patch from a 12-pack of designs I bought from Sixel Designs back at Halloween. I'm going to use the Murder of Crows pattern. And that way we can have a little patch that will have crows sitting on a power wire. For the handles, I'd like to use something that is a cotton or a cotton blend. I had this lovely Lion brand comfy cotton blend. I used this on my dice bag. If you saw that tutorial, I will link that up here in the places. But I have quite a lot of this on hand. I picked it up on clearance sale a couple years ago and just hadn't ever decided what to do with it. I have a few other colors of it you can see over here. I got a lot of Lion brand yarn on clearance sale that I have still not used. So this is a great opportunity to stash bust. So we'll use this for the handle color as well as for the backdrop of the crows. And then I thought we could use a white for the crows. That way it will stand out. I think these colors will complement the bag itself nicely. The blue shades in the yarn will tie into the blue of the bag. So that's the plan. We need to make an I-cord to use for the handle, and then we need to do our mosaic overlay patch. Let's get started. This is my tulip I-cord knitter. You just feed your yarn in here and then crank this handle to produce an I-cord. So as you can see, we just keep cranking and keep cranking. Oh, and there's the I-cord starting to come out of the machine right here. We'll do a couple more cranks just so that you can get an idea of what the I-cord looks like when it comes out the bottom. And that's as easy as it is right there. I'm gonna take my I-cord knitter in a place where I can hold it with the weight swinging at the bottom because there's just not enough clearance in this space right here for me to do it. And we'll move the camera and let you watch. We'll do a time lapse. As I crank the I-cord, you'll notice me periodically adjusting the weight to pull it back up towards the top. If you let the weight stay at the bottom, it will start to swing more widely like a giant pendulum and will tangle on your working yarn. This way, it's a little bit easier. Okay, my friends, we are ready to cast off. Crank the handle in a reverse direction, and then it should just drop off of all of the needles. A little I-cord here with 4 loops that are active on the end. I have loaded up a sewing needle here with my tail, and I'm just gonna go through with my needle and loop through every one of these loops. One like that, and bam. And now we've got our big ol' I-cord. What I'm gonna do is attach the ends together, and then we can use this to wrap around our grocery bag. And then all we'll need to do is sew it to the bag, and we still need to make our patch. So let's get started on that. All right, it's time for a check-in. I've been working diligently on my mosaic crochet piece, and I'm about halfway through, so I figured I would stop and show you now. Overall, I think it's turning out really nicely. You can see most of the details just fine. This acrylic yarn could be a little bit better. There's a couple spots where there's a bit of gapping. If I get in really close, you can see, but when I pull back, it's not so bad. I'm thinking I can go in and zhuzh this guy up a little bit once I get further along in the project, or maybe once it's all done. Maybe I can like tug on these stitches a little bit. If I tug on them, I don't know. This is my brand new 3.75mm hook that I just got as a Secret Santa gift from one of my coworkers. I was specifically requesting this size of hook because my other one has seen better days, and while it may look fine to you on the outside, this is not okay, because the metal part came out multiple times on me, and on the last time I decided I would just glue it back in with E6000 and be done with it. I did, but I didn't make sure it was straight when I did that, and it's slightly angled, so it's really hard to tell. The hook head tilts slightly in one direction, and then I have to twist it extra hard to get it out from under all my stitches, which makes it just like, it's just slower. It's a lot slower, but this one's really nice. If you're not really familiar with mosaic overlay crochet, it's essentially working 2 different colors in single rows right to left. On the back, you can see where there's the white stitches and then the blue stitches. And then when I turn it over this way, we're selectively deciding which ones to allow to show in order to develop a pattern. As you can see here, I've got the little wire and I've got my 4 birdies on here, and technically I think we are just over halfway. I started to feel like it was time for me to take a break mentally, physically. I think it's time for a snack. I'm gonna go eat something sugary and sweet because I just feel like my brain has decided to stop functioning. I'm going to edit it out, but there was like an 8-second pause there where I just trailed off and couldn't think of what I was going to say. Clearly time for me to take a break. This project's going really quickly so far. Foreshadowing. But anyway, I'm gonna go take a break and I'll come back and do some more. It's time for an update. Okay, I'm here with an update, which is, it's done. Look, it's kind of hard to see, but look, little birdies. It's a bunch of birdies. I'm gonna try to block this, like steam block it with an iron, because I don't have a blocking board. As you can see, this is its natural shape. This is not attractive, and it's not going to sit appropriately on the bag like this. So we are going to have to try to steam block it. Also, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with all these ends. Probably some form of tucking them in the back and pretending that they don't exist.
I don't know you. Who is this? Don't come here.
Because weaving all of these in is so much work. I'm pretty sure in one of the Sixel Designs patterns there was instructions on how to turn it into a patch. So I'm going to look that up and see if it has any tips on what to do with the ends and, you know, maybe doing a border or something to hide these border stitches that you have to do. But otherwise, look, I'm very proud. Hopefully it turns out looking good. Okay, that's enough. We've shown the patch. So we've got our patch and we've got our I-cord. I still need to attach the ends of the I-cord together. We need to steam block our patch. Then all we really need to do is attach everything together. I'm gonna go research different methods of turning this guy into a patch, and we'll work on steam blocking this, and I'll check back in. After steam blocking, I used the blue tails on one end to wrap over the white tails so they would not be visible on the finished patch, and then wove all of the tails down just enough to get them out of the way of the edge. And once I sew the bag together, you won't be able to see these tails at all. So here you're just going to see me doing that same thing to the opposite side. While steam blocking did help this patch with its shaping, I think ultimately this project is showing me that I have a gap in my equipment and need some sort of a blocking board going forward if I'm going to be making patches or squares. I tried to use my fingers to smooth this patch down as I was sewing to keep it even, but that technique was not very effective and it did just result in a little bit of bunching, which I could have avoided if I'd been able to properly block this patch to begin with. Hi, we've reached the point where the only thing I have left to do for this bag is to attach the handle to it here. And the problem now comes in that I did not consider how wide the patch was when I made some critical decisions earlier in the process. I'll hold up the mess of a project right now so that you can see what we're working with. The patch that we're using here is pretty wide. When I thought through the process very briefly, my thinking was I would sew the patch on first and then I would sew the handle on second, and that way the handle would go along the edges of the patch. What I did not take into account for that is that the patch is very wide, and it is wider than the initial handles were. This puts me into a very interesting predicament as to what am I going to do for the handle. What you can see here was me starting to pin this in place and then getting frustrated with lining everything up appropriately because I had a headache and deciding to do it later. And now, welcome to later. I started going through and attaching the handle to the bag, wasn't sure that it was lining up appropriately, second guessed my process of doing this entirely, and then decided I did not have the brain power to finish that task at that moment. I don't know if wide set handles are going to be a problem. The original handles for the bag were here and here attached to each side, which as you can see is narrower than the width of this patch. If I were to put the handles at the same width where they were previously, they're going to overlap the birds on the patch. So we have a couple of options. We can go ahead with our plan to keep the handle at the outer edge of the patch here. We can decide to put the handle across the patch itself between two of the birds. This will make it narrower than the handle was previously set. I'm honestly not sure what's going to look best. This is a lovely shot. I think what I'll do is move it to between those two birds and we'll see what that looks like to see if we think that is better looking. I feel like this part looks too narrow. I'm losing all perspective on this project at this point. Maybe that's just a personal preference thing, but I think I do like it better with the weird wide handles. So I guess we're going to go with the wide handle version. Now we get to issue number 2 that I was having with sewing this handle onto the bag, and that is placement and making sure that it is even. The bag has a lot of funky angles, so it's hard to visually line up where the center of the bottom of the bag is. I also feel like we're going to run into an issue of the handle is slightly stretchy materials, right? So that's going to make it harder for me to line it up with the right amount of slack sewn into it. I'm not a great sewist, so the concept of doing this at all is mildly intimidating, and then any obstacle in my path is enough to make me want to stop. The only thing pushing me through at this point is finishing this video. I can't think of how to say this without it possibly sounding extremely convoluted, so we're just going to go for it and hope it makes sense. What I think we're going to do is find the center line here and then find those quarters on the string handle. Line up the quarter points to the equator on the bottom of the bag, lined up with the edges of the patch. I hope that made sense. Then we can pull the handle across the bag and pin the handle in place up the sides of the bag. And then I think it'll be ready to sew. Ask me to crochet a bag, I can do that. Ask me to sew a bag, oh my god, it's like I'm a mathlete in the Math Olympics. I feel like the meme of the lady making the thinking face and then the numbers, just the... This should not be this hard. I think we're going to do that. We're going to find the points on this handle. We're going to find that line on the bag and pin everything in place and cross our fingers and hope that that's going to work. After marking out the quarter points on the handle with some safety pins, I went about finding that center line across the bottom panel of the bag. It was a little bit challenging, but eventually I was able to find it and mark it out with some stick pins. That way I would have a visual reference when it came time to sew. I went through and pinned the handle in place, and then it was time for me to start the sewing process, which went really smoothly on the first half and got a lot more challenging as I got down onto the bottom and the back side of the bag. And we're back. Did manage to stab myself in the thumb during that sewing session, so good job me. I managed to sew one side of the strap in place. It felt painful more than just the stabbing myself in the thumb part. It seemed to go okay on this side because I have like a visual reference. Pinning it to here causes a slight like this where it bumps out, and so then it doesn't necessarily stay super flat, and it's hard if you pin it a bunch to keep track of where it is. So then I decided that I wasn't going to pin it as much. Yeah, that was not the best idea, because in reality what has happened is does have a wonky line on the bottom here, but I mean, no one's going to look at the bottom. And then on the back side, I feel like it's puckering a little bit where I got a little bit too much tension in the line when I was sewing it. This is more challenging to do than I initially thought it would be. It's going though. It's going. We're making it through. I'm halfway done, right? We're halfway through the process of sewing. Man, this really stings. Now we just need to do the other side. I think what I'm going to do before I actually sew the second side down is unpin it and adjust the tension. Here's the amount of tension on the back side and here's the amount on the front. But I think it'll turn out okay. If it looks like garbage, that's kind of because it is garbage. I mean, theoretically, this was gonna just be garbage. I was just gonna throw this thing away. If I can do anything to make it more functional again, I guess it doesn't matter if it's super pretty. I was just hoping that it would turn out prettier. My bad sewing skills are biting me in the butt yet again. If I had a sewing machine, I could probably sew this down with my sewing machine and I would have had this done in like 15 minutes or something, but I don't have a sewing machine. I don't know how to use a sewing machine. I don't really even know how to sew very well. So we're just going to make do with what we have and then eventually work our way up to learning to sew. It's on my bucket list, okay? But it looks pretty good on the front side, like where the patch is. So if we just face this part out, then it'll be fine. No one has to know what hellishness and secrets await them on the bottom side of this bag. I think it's time for me to actually get cracking on this next step. I'm going to take a break and have a snack because I can just feel my motivation bottoming out with this really soul-crushing task of hand sewing things. Man, I am just not ever motivated to hand sew. I'm going to go have some chocolate and peanut butter. And then I'm going to come back and we're going to adjust this and we're going to keep going. After a delicious snack and a really much needed mental health break, I got back at it so I could finish this cursed project once and for all. This was, however, when I started to run into more problems. This is all my fault because I made the brilliant choice to sew this project together with the same yarn that I used to make it. I thought, in all of my wisdom, that this would be the correct move because my sewing stitches would not be as visible on the finished project. The consequence of that action is that this yarn started to unply while I was sewing with it. It is a blue variated piece that is spun together with a white piece, and the white piece wanted to be the entire problem today and knotted up on me somewhere around the bottom of this bag. I ended up having to just cut that yarn strand out and finish sewing it with just the blue part instead. That ended up working perfectly, and then the only problem became having to stretch the I-cord the entire time that I was sewing in order to get it to fit onto the bag without altering the size of the handles. I managed to pull it off though, and in the end got the bag back to a usable state. And here it is, the finished bag. Overall, I am so pleased with how this project has turned out. This bag was going to be complete garbage. I was going to be throwing this thing away, and now instead of being in a landfill, it's going to be something that I can hopefully keep using for years to come. I'm also really stoked to see that the technique actually worked to repair this bag and that I can use it again in the future. I think going forward, I will make the I-cord extra long and then not close it up. That way, if I need to shorten the I-cord, I can, and having the I-cord in a closed loop made it a little bit harder to navigate through the alignment process. So if you've got some broken grocery bags laying around that you need to repair, you can use a similar technique, and hopefully those tips will help you avoid some of the puckering that I got on my finished bag. But at least this bag is out of a landfill and back in service. I hope that you've enjoyed watching me struggle through the process of saving this bag from the landfill. If you did, drop a like on the video and think about subscribing. I upload crochet videos every other Wednesday, and I love to make new crochet friends. Speaking of crochet friends, follow me on social media. I post there every single day. I'm Graceface Creates on all platforms. Thank you so much for watching, and happy crocheting.